Richard Blackwood hadn't stepped into a modest restaurant in 15 years. His life was boardrooms and five-star establishments where waiters knew his order before he sat down. But today his assistant had picked this quiet place for a lunch meeting, and something about it felt strangely familiar. He was studying the menu when she approached his table. The young woman wore the standard uniform with her hair pulled back neatly. She smiled that professional smile servers perfect over time and asked if he was ready to order. Richard glanced up to answer. Then his world stopped. On her left forearm, just below the elbow, was a crescent-shaped scar. His mind catapulted back 30 years to a humid summer night when everything fell apart. He was 12 and his sister Maya was 8. Their parents had died in a car accident 3 months earlier. The state separated them into different foster homes. He remembered that last night in the group home before they took her away. Maya had tripped on the stairs trying to reach him. She cut her arm badly on the metal railing. He held her while she cried, wrapping his shirt around the wound until help came. He promised her that night he would find her again, but the system swallowed them whole. Different families, different cities, different lives. Now here she stood. Older, of course, but he could see their mother's eyes and their father's nose. Richard's hands trembled as he set down the menu. "Excuse me," he said, his voice barely steady. "That scar on your arm. How did you get it?" The woman's professional smile faltered. She touched the mark self-consciously. "Oh, this," she said softly. "I got it when I was a child. A fall. Nothing dramatic." Richard leaned forward, searching her face. "Do you remember anything else about that night?" She looked confused and a bit concerned. "Why would you ask that?" He took a breath. "Because I think I was there. I think I'm your brother." The restaurant noise faded into nothing. She stared at him, her lips parting in shock. Her tray tilted and the water glasses slid. Richard caught them without thinking. "Maya," she whispered. "That's my name. How did you know?" Richard felt tears burning behind his eyes, something he hadn't allowed himself in decades. "Because I'm Richard. I held you that night. I promised I'd find you." Her hands flew to her mouth. The tray clattered onto the table. Other diners turned to look, but neither of them noticed. "You wore a red shirt," she said, the words tumbling out. "You wrapped it around my arm. You told me to be brave. You sang that silly song Mom used to sing." Richard nodded, unable to speak. She covered her face and her shoulders shook. 30 years of searching, 30 years of wondering if she even remembered him. And here she was serving him lunch. The restaurant manager hurried over, clearly alarmed by the scene. "Is everything all right here?" Maya turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "Tom, I need to take a break." "Please." The manager looked between them, sensing something profound was happening. "Take all the time you need." Richard stood, and Maya collapsed into his arms. They held each other while 3 decades of grief and loss poured out. "I looked for you," she whispered against his shoulder. "For years I looked. Every time I saw someone who might be you. I never stopped hoping." "I never stopped either," he said. "Every success I had felt hollow because you weren't there to share it." They sat down together, ignoring the curious glances. Maya explained how she'd bounced through 6 foster homes, how she'd worked her way through community college, how she'd married young to a kind man named David who worked as a mechanic. They had 2 children. She'd built a good life, but there was always an empty space where her brother should have been. Richard told her about his own journey. A stroke of luck with a tech startup. Years of ruthless work that filled the void of loneliness. The fortune he'd built while searching databases and hiring investigators who turned up nothing. "I have so much," he said, "but none of it meant anything without family." Maya reached across the table and took his hand. "You have family now." Richard looked at this remarkable woman who'd survived everything life threw at her, who still smiled warmly at strangers, who raised children and worked hard and never lost her kindness. He'd spent years believing success would heal the wound of losing her. But sitting here in this ordinary restaurant, he understood that she was a success, not the money or the power. This moment, this reconnection. "I want to know everything," he said. "Your children, your husband, your favorite color, what you do on Sundays. Everything I missed." "We have time now," she said, squeezing his hand. We have all the time in the world. Richard smiled through his tears. That scar on your arm, I used to think it was my fault. That if I'd held on to you tighter that night. Maya shook her head. It brought you back to me. How can I regret it? They talked until the lunch crowd cleared. Made plans to meet the next day with her family. Exchanged phone numbers like it was the most precious transaction in the world. As Richard left the restaurant, he looked back. Maya stood in the doorway waving. The autumn sun caught her face, and for a moment she was 8 years old again. His little sister. Safe at last. He'd found her not in some dramatic search, but in the quiet moment of an ordinary day. Sometimes the miracles we pray for arrive when we stop looking, when we simply live and trust that the universe remembers its promises. Richard had spent 30 years building an empire, but it took a simple scar and a chance lunch to bring him home. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who believes in second chances and the power of family. Subscribe for more heartwarming tales that remind us what truly matters. And leave a comment below telling us about a moment when life surprised you with an unexpected blessing. Read Triclaw can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.